in the grand scheme of things, what I'm about to talk about is vastly more important than people realize. And I'm just going to talk about it real quick. Was reading Athlon. This one sentence about an opposing coach talking about Georgia's program is very simple. It's actually two sentences. We got a comma splice. I'm not going to get into that. Kirby is still Kirby. He's pulling talent. You know, when you take a look back at 2024 and you think about 23 and some of the disappointments at the end of those seasons, and by the way, from here on out in college football, every year that you get to the playoff and you don't win it, there's going to be disappointment. So everyone now in college football that matters is going to end the season with a loss except one team. Everybody else is going to get that loss and they're going to have to move on. In the case of Georgia these last 2 years, they ended their season with a devastating loss in 2023 to Alabama that didn't even give them the ability to play for the national championship, and they went on to smoke Florida State. In 2024, they went on to lose to Notre Dame in a game that, they didn't play well. Georgia didn't play well. I don't know that Notre Dame played well, to be honest with you, but they played well enough. And, this is the new world. But what sort of is being lost out there, I think, in writing our 2025 preview that's coming out next, it's being mailed out this time next week or before this time next week, is just the amount of talent that is on the roster at Georgia. And I think that's the part that is being left out of all of this is, quote, he's still pulling talent. No question. There's no doubt that guy is still pulling talent. That's all there is to it. And you don't win without talent. And your talent has to perform, and your talent has to be healthy. And, when you look at this defensive line specifically, there's a lot of big, athletic guys that have not played a ton. I write about this in the preview. People won't stop talking about Elijah Griffin, but what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything if you don't show up during the games. This is the preview edition right here. It's just something you kind of want to check out. I've got a great offer down below. 3 months for the price of one, and you get the magazine for free, $60 value for just $15. So you can get the magazine and 3 months of Dawg Post just by signing up with the link down below. Got all the details down there. But, this is a keepsake for the 25 season. Here's the cover. You've seen the cover a million times. You start talking about Griffin and, Christian Miller. Christian Miller's played a fair amount, but there's a lot of guys on this defensive line that are good. They're just young. Xavier McLeod, he didn't play a ton last season. He played some at South Carolina. He's really not had a full go season the entire time of his college career that he's been playing eligible playing, not red shirts or anything like that. So there are some unknowns there. Part of me might think, well, if they were so good, why didn't play last year? A year makes a huge difference in college. A huge difference. I remember freshman year, and again, my credentials are as follows. I graduated from Coker at college, went on to get a master's degree from the University of Georgia and the School of Public and International Affairs, number 4 school in the country for that. So pretty well qualified. My head was spinning completely my entire freshman season, and I was playing basketball and tennis, not football with tons of plays. We only had probably 45 plays, and your head is going nuts. Well, you come back after a year and you already know all the stuff you're supposed to know. You know the drills that you're supposed to know. Now it's, can you fine tune what you're supposed to be doing? That's what you're going to look at on this defensive line. Is Trey Scott has done a pretty good job over the years getting first-year players to jump to a bigger level second year. I mean, Kirby's talked about this. It doesn't have to be Kirby to see it, though. And some guys just explode on the scene. So as much discussion as there's been about Griffin, And I'm not disputing it, because the people I talk to, that's who I'm taking their word on it. There's other guys too, and will they make the jump? But man, it's there. They got to go do it. That's the challenge. Is for Kirby and them last year, really, a couple things got in the way. A, the injuries were a real problem, particularly on the offensive line, I would say. B, the talent, failed them when they needed it. Too many drop passes, too many times when ETN was not available. And, I think it's it's Schumann, it's Glenn Schumann, I don't know who he got this from. And Glenn, excuse me. Glenn, if this is your quote, you need to be giving credit for it. But my suspicion is, knowing the coaches I've had, probably got it from another coach. The best ability is availability. If someone wants to tell me who that was, Billie Jean King saying pressure is a privilege is one of the greatest quotes in life. Because if you feel pressure, that means it's important. That means what you're doing is important. If you don't feel pressure, it means you're tying your shoes. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to people who have a challenge physically tying their shoes. Okay, that can be taken the wrong way. Some people tying their shoes is a massive accomplishment, and be cruel in the comments to see how that treats you. But pressure as a privilege is an important thing. If it's important, if you're on the free throw line down 1, if you are in the 8th overtime against your arch rival at home, that means you're in a situation where if you feel it, that means it matters. That means you've been doing work for a reason. And I don't, I know a lot of this stuff is coach speak, but the reality is that those things are true. The repetition of doing practices consistently, being consistently consistent, those things all matter. For Georgia last year, they just were not consistent on the offensive side of the ball at all, okay, particularly. So that's going to be a job for Gunner. That's going to be a job for Mike Bobo, Stacy, Coley, Hartley. They're all going to have to get it to where it's got to go on the offensive side of the ball. It's about execution, and you can only really execute if you're consistently performing, okay, in practice. You're not just going to do it in the games, all right? That is not based in reality. I can tell you, as a person who's on a very limited level coached, a person who's certainly played way too many games, matches, contests. If you're not doing it in practice, you don't just suddenly love and rockets come alive during games. That doesn't happen. So you've got to do it during practices. And when you do that, you have the confidence to say, well, what are you talking about? What am I worried about? There's nothing to worry about. I've done this a million times in practice. I can do it in a game. Because games, although not exactly like practice, are as close as you get to practice. You can't practice games, except it's G-Day, I guess. So I think that all of those things being said, Georgia has gotten talent, and it does matter that they have Colby Young, Branch, and Thomas coming into this thing at receiver. It does matter that in the secondary, they've addressed some of the concern. Look, their secondary is not that bad to begin with. Okay, you did lose Starks and Jackson, but we're not. We're not talking about a team that's starting from zero in the secondary. They're certainly not starting from zero at linebacker. I think you do have a question. I have a legitimate question about who are the pass rushers, who are the people providing pressure on the quarterback, who is making the quarterback the most important position on the field in the sport, who is making that position uncomfortable, making them work, shuffle their feet, keep the ball where it's supposed to be, when you're moving around in the pocket, who is putting pressure on the left tackle or right tackle or the guards and making them jump offside or worry about this or taking false steps, getting goofed up with hand placement, all those things. Who's doing that? I don't know. That doesn't mean, just because I don't know doesn't mean the coaches don't know, and it certainly doesn't mean that person doesn't exist. You could talk about the transfer from Army. There's any number of ways to, it could be Justin Williams. I mean, I don't know, but that person needs to be there. With the notion that they're not, what I'm trying to say at the end of the day is we get so not just penciled in, but sort of penned in. We write it in ink about what's going to happen each season. Clemson and Alabama for, I can't even remember how long. The only notion was that they could win and play in the national championship game. And that happened, two times or something like that, 3 times, whatever it was. I mean, but by then though, that was when it was chiseled in, and that time had come and gone. 2024 has come and gone. I know I talk about it as a reference point, but it has come and gone. And now as you look forward to 25, there are not obvious answers in many instances at Ohio State, at Texas. Is Arch Manning good? Some people think he's really, really good, straight up. And some people are sort of haters on him. And I don't know what it is. I know he's a gifted runner for sure. He sure seems like he knows how to throw the football. Can he put it all together? I don't know. Okay, that's something that Sark and them are going to have to figure out, and Sark and them know. I mean, one of the two things is true about it can be multiple things at the same time, but there was a reason why Arch did not go over Quinn Ewers. All right, and then again, a year makes a huge difference. So Manning had the ability to play a lot of snaps for Texas this past season. I mean, I think he started and played the entire game at Mississippi State. They didn't play great against Mississippi State, Texas. Georgia was okay against Mississippi State. But, now you're a year later with Gunner, right? Gunner and Arch Manning are, I think Gunner's probably more experienced than Arch, but you get my point here. What are you surrounding them with? What does the offensive line look like at Georgia? All of these things matter. They are all extremely important variables in the entire thing. Kirby's job at Georgia is not to be friendly to fans, nice to reporters, be concerned about the health and physical safety of the world community. His job is to win football games. That's his job. It's not to spread world peace. His job is to win football games. And the number one thing in my experience in doing that is the acquisition of talent. And according to this coach that's being quoted in Athon, nothing's changed on that front. Thanks for watching.